Hello everybody, my name is Nootmad. I hope you're doing well and welcome back to another Borderlands 3 build video. Today we're going to be going over my BLOODSPLOSION Moze build, and yep, you heard me right. Through the creative use of some skills and gear, we can finally and genuinely bloodsplode enemies, just like our main man Craig did way back in Borderlands 2 with his BLOODSPLOSION skill. The primary mechanic that allows this build to be as dangerous as it is the radiation element, and more specifically, the radiation aura. This aura scales with numerous bonuses such as splash radius, damage, and overkill, and is what allows the damage for the auras to be as lethal as they are. This build has been an absolute ton of fun, and I've been running through the takedowns with actually a lot of ease. I actually ran this build over on my Twitch channel, so if you want to jump in and hang out while I test out other builds just like this, do takedowns together, and just have a grand old time, I'll be putting the link to my Twitch channel in a pinned comment down below, so feel free to hop on by. I stream on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 AM Eastern Time. So, aside from that, let's just get straight on to the point of the why that you clicked on this video, and I'm sure you want to learn why you can bloodsplode enemies and how you can do it for yourself. So, let's learn some things. Now, the main star of this build is the Prompt Critical. It's a DLC 4 legendary pistol that drops from Evil Lilith in Castle Crimson. Now, I did make a quick weapon guide on this video. I'll be putting the link to it in the top right now, so feel free to check that out if you want to see where you can find Evil Lilith and the best way to farm her, and a bit more in-depth explanation of this pistol. But, just for the sake of simplicity, I'll just quickly go over why this pistol is so effective and why it makes this build tick. And it's mainly in its sticky mode. Now, being a tall weapon, it has its impact firing mode and a sticky firing mode, but compared to other torque sticky modes, the Prompt Critical does a bit differently. In fact, as you can see on the item card, subsequent stuck gyrojets combine, increasing the damage and radius of the detonation. What that basically means is that the more sticky projectiles you land on an enemy and make them explode, they will do more damage, and the radius of those explosions will increase with every stuck projectile. Now, with Moze's rapid ammo regen, you are very much able to spam a ton of stickers onto an enemy, and once you create those explosions, it is very likely to chain to other enemies, spreading the radiation effect, and once you kill an irradiated enemy, they explode in that radiation aura, which chains other enemies, deals damage, it scales with splash and overkill like I said before, and is how you're able to wipe out massive clusters of enemies very quickly. Now, in the gameplay in the background, you got to see that those things happen quite frequently, especially when I was doing the crystals and guardian takedown, and because of this sort of damage, makes it very easy to do mobbing in large areas, or in areas with large enemy densities. So, as far as the elements go, radiation is the number one element. However, I do recommend getting yourselves a corrosive variant as well, just because currently the hardest bosses in the game, being Valkyries, Anathema in Guardian Takedown, Wotan from Maliwan Takedown, and Scourge from the Guardian Takedown as well, are all heavy armor-based HP targets. So, having that corrosive variant helps a lot to be able to deal extra damage, because radiation does less damage to armor, and I'm sure you don't want to be wasting your time when you're doing boss killing, so that's why I recommend the corrosive variant. Now, those are the weapons out of the way. Now, typically, I know a lot of my builds focus on flexibility, but this build has just been too good to pass up, and that's why there's only basically one weapon that I want to focus on. But yeah, if you don't have a Prompt Critical, you can also use a Radiation Plague Barrel. That works almost as well, but I just find the Prompt Critical's weapon effect makes it incredible to use for this build specifically. Now, onto the shield, we have the Multivitamin Plus Ultra. Now, you can use one of two shields. You can either use the Plus Ultra for the extra HP, the extra skill cooldown rate, and we'll get into why that's important a little bit later, or alternatively, you can use a Radiation Old God just to buff up a radiation damage even more and increase the overall DPS of this build. It's really up to you. If you find you're struggling with getting Iron Bear back on cooldown, or just struggling to survive, the Multivitamin Plus Ultra will help you greatly. If not, and you want to go full damage, feel free to use the Radiation Old God. The Multivitamin Plus Ultra is a DLC 4 shield, and the Radiation Old God is a world drop from bosses in DLC 2. So, the anoints I recommend on both of those shields would be after exiting Iron Bear, kills increase Iron Bear's cooldown rate by 30%. Now, why is this anoint so important? Because the main class mod we're going to be using for this build is the Rocketeer class mod. What the Rocketeer does is that it enables Auto Bear to last the rest of the duration that Iron Bear had left if Moze gets that early. So basically, if you get out of Iron Bear immediately, Auto Bear is going to stay up for the whole duration that Iron Bear typically would have, which means you get a lot of character control through Rocketeer, Auto Bear standing up, And Order Bear is allowed to do a bunch of damage as well and help you to deal with massive groups of enemies. Now, because of this, and because Rocketeer chews up your entire fuel and puts Iron Bear back on maximum cooldown, being able to have the cooldown anoint on your shield helps a lot to make sure you have Order Bear up as much as possible. The skill rolls I recommend for the Rocketeer is +5 Torg cross promotions. Now, I know Skagden is incredibly busted right now, and buffing that to 10 out of 5 would be probably more damage, but the point of this build is to blood split as many enemies as possible, and because the radiation auras scale with splash damage radius as well, and what Torg promotion does is increase our splash damage radius, it just makes sense to have that skill boosted as much as possible. The stat rolls I recommend, or the substats, would be splash damage radius, splash damage, pistol damage, or something like radiation damage too, depending on whichever combination of those three you want. So yeah, that's the class one out of the way, and the relic I suggest you use is the Atom Balm Victory Rush. Now, what the Atom Balm prefix does is it increases the aura damage, increases the radius as well, which makes this build even more lethal, especially when you get these radiation explosions, and increases the likelihood of those radiation auras to chain to other enemies, creating that sort of BLOODSPLOSION effect that you're seeing in the background right now. And the Victory Rush relic gives us extra multiplicative damage through the Victory Rush effect, which gives us extra movement speed and damage on killing a badass. The Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge is also a decent relic to use, but because we already have consecutive hits anointment on our guns, I wouldn't really suggest it. Not to mention the fact that the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge can't roll with 3 substats, and is locked to substats that aren't really as optimal for Moze, like mag size and HP regen. If you use a Victory Rush, for example, you can get 3 substats, and as you can see on the screen, skills like pistol damage, radiation damage, and AoE damage are best in slot for that, and is what I would recommend to farm for. The grenade we have is the Mervtacular Radiation Hex with the on grenade throw. Now, typically I would recommend a cloning maddening tracker, which I always say is the bread and butter grenade one for Moze, but because of those CM2 renegades constantly swarming back towards you and downing you more often than not, I've actually found using a Mervtacular Hex has reduced the chances of me downing myself, so it just plays very nicely with this playstyle, and not to mention the fact that you can put out more radiation damage on the field to create those more chances of those BLOODSPLOSION chains. Now, that's all the gear out of the way, and let's just move straight onto the skill tree, and we can start off with Bottomless Mags. Now, there's nothing really too special here. We have Cloud of Lead, and Redistribution to increase our ammo regen and ammo efficiency. We have Darker Bear to help if things get too claustrophobic and you do need a quick breather. Because we have Order Bear out most of the time, you can just jump straight into that and get Iron Bear back off cooldown, and you can also stay alive for a little bit longer if things get too hairy. Because we have skills like Experimental Munitions and Firing the Skagden, we also have Stoke the Embers, which boosts our overall incendiary damage from ourselves and Iron Bear. Scrappy as well is a really nice skill to have, because it gives us extra damage while moving, as well as that weapon swap and mode swap speed. We also have Scorching RPMs, increases the fire rate, and because the sticky mode for the Prompt Critical already has a decent fire rate, being able to boost that enables the amount of stickies we can put on an enemy in a short period of time, and it just plays well very nicely with the critical hit damage increase, and also increasing our Iron Bear damage too. We also have Specialist Bear for the Iron Bear damage, and yeah, that's Bottomless Mags out of the way. Now we'll move on to Demolition Woman Tree, and first impressions, there's nothing too specifically different to this tree as it is to my other trees. We have Fire and Skagden because it's an absolutely busted skill and gives us an absolute ton of instant damage on splash. This also buffs our radiation auras too, so yeah, just increases the damage overall quite a lot. We have Grizzled at 5 out of 5 because we're using Order Bear a lot in Rocketeer, so this helps us get Order Bear back as fast as possible to make sure he's out on the field as much as possible. We have 3 Means of Destruction, 5 in Torque Cross Emotions, and 5 in Stainless Steel Bear, just to buff our ammo regeneration and grenade regen, to buff our splash damage radius, and buff our Iron Bear, give him a little bit more HP to play around with so he doesn't get one shot. We have 1 in Pull the Holy Pin. Now, I know I'm not using a clothing maddening tracker, and I typically say that it is somewhat optimal to have 3 out of 3, or at least 2 out of 3 if you're not using one. But I have found that with the Hex Grenade and just the fact that you can actually hit crits yourself, 1 is enough. However, if you find that you're struggling to hit crits, feel free to take a point out of Stainless Steel Bear and put it in Pull the Holy Pin. We have Auto Bear. Not really much reason to explain why. We have a Rocketeer class mod. The other reason why it works is that we have Auto Bear, so that's why I picked it up. Auto Bear does provide a lot of aggro relief and crowd control through the use of capacitive armatures, which is something we'll get into a little bit later. So yeah, that's why I picked that skill. We then have Vampire to heal ourselves with Moze, and unfortunately because we're not using Splash Trap as an Iron Bear, however you can, but once again, something we'll go into a little bit later, we'll also regen Iron Bear's HP as well. We also have To the Last. It's a very useful utility skill. It's a single point, helps us maintain our 2 Angry to Die Guardian perk, so if we go down, we have more time to play around with and we're less likely to die immediately. And we have Short Fuse, because it's Short Fuse, gives us an extra ton of damage on 20% chance to deal an absolute ton of damage. And with the amount of bullets we're firing, the fire rate of our pistols, we're going to be getting a lot of those procs. So that's Demolition Woman tree out of the way, and we move on to Shield of Retribution. So we have Security Bear, because as I've mentioned before, Security Bear is a very useful skill to have. It gives Iron Bear a bubble shield, and also, unlike it says on the card, also gives Iron Bear just a straight up flat damage reduction, even if the shield isn't active. So it just increases the chances of our Iron Bear staying alive for a lot longer. We then have Armored Infantry. It's more likely it's more there just to help us push down further into tree, to pick up Drowning and Brass, to give us 60% gun damage after 3 kills, and Experiment Munitions gives us extra instant damage on crit. So that's the Shield of Retribution tree out of the way, and that's basically all the trees explained. And as far as the hard points go, I highly recommend using the Capacitive Armatures argument, which is the shock railgun augment for the railgun in Shield of Retribution tree. And honestly, it's by far the best, highest damage Iron Bear augment in the game right now, just because of the sheer amount of damage it does, and the splinter damage can chain to a bunch of enemies, wiping them out very easily as well. And if you're doing this against the Guardians in the Guardian Takedown, they die very quickly to this, especially if you have as much damage in Auto Bear as you can see I have put in through the skill trees. So aside from that, if you don't want to use that, you can also use the target softening augments in the Demolition Woman tree, or the Hammer Down protocol as well. So yeah, out of all the augments, first priority would be Capacitive Armatures. If you don't want to use that, you can use a combination of target softening and Hammer Down protocol. So yeah, that's basically the build. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been actually having a ton of fun with this. As I said before, it's probably one of the best builds I've made, even though it might be a bit of a gimmick sort of, but it's honestly a very high damage build, and the mobbing potential for this build is absolutely insane. I'm sure you saw at some points in the background gameplay that doing the Guardian Takedown, especially the crystals, is typically a tedious effort, but with this build was quite a breeze. Everything died very quickly, especially when I got those chains off. So yeah, that's about it for the build. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. I do my best to read through every single one of them and answer them as well. So yeah, any questions, any feedback about this build, do let me know in the comments below. But yeah, aside from that, thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.